What is going on, y'all? Welcome to another edition of the EPA Podcast brought to you by Bleeding Green Nation. I'm one of your hosts, as always, Victor Williams. Be sure to follow me on all social media platforms over at the Philly Pod. Do the same for the other host of the EPA show right here. You can follow him at Shane Haff NFL on all social media platforms. Shane, we have one more preseason game to get through that's going to be very irrelevant, but one more game, and then football is going to start to matter. So I can't wait for that. Are you excited for the preseason to be over? I know in the beginning we were like, well, live football, it's about time. At least we have something to watch. Now it's at the point where I'm like, all right, let's bring on the regular season. I think we should probably shorten the preseason to like 2 weeks. Like after 2 weeks, you know what the deal is. Like the third week, who really makes that much of an impression in the third preseason game to the point where it matters? Like I think after the second preseason game, I think the rosters are pretty much set now.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles literally just signed a bunch of defensive tackles so they don't have to play anyone that will make the roster on Thursday. But I will say, I hope I get to watch. I may not be able to, but I am excited to see Anthony Richardson. He was my QB1 in this last draft, and Shane Steichen said that the Colts are going to play their starters some. So I am anxious to get a look at him live against the Eagles' third-string practice squad, whatever rolls out on Thursday.
We're getting the all-important Anthony Richardson versus who should have been QB2 in the draft, Tanner McKee. I look forward to that. I remember our draft episodes. You had Anthony Richardson above CJ Stroud and both Bryce Young. What was your kind of intel into that? Why do you have Richardson so high above guys that kind of have higher floors?
It's all about the athleticism for me. I think each of the top three quarterbacks in the draft, and I'm throwing out Will Levis because I didn't think he was a first-round grade, but each of those top three quarterbacks has some pretty big red flags. For CJ Stroud, it was his ability to create out of structure. Mm-hmm. He did it in that one game against Georgia, but it's a one-game sample size. And Eagles fans know all too well about one-game sample sizes with Nick Foles in the Super Bowl. So there's a red flag there with Stroud. There was a red flag with Bryce Young just for his size. It's unprecedented. Like I think I think Young is going to be a good quarterback. I just question for how long he's going to be able to play at his stature. And then with Anthony Richardson, obviously, it's his lack of experience at the collegiate level. And so with all three guys having red flags, question marks, that question marks is a better term than red flag. Mm-hmm. I just bet on the guy that's the most athletic quarterback to ever play the position. So that's why I had him high. There's some projection there. It's his sky-high potential, although I will acknowledge that I would not be surprised if he has a rougher rookie year than either Stroud or Young.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he leads the league in interceptions this year, depending on what it is that do. So if you were at the top of the draft and you were a QB needy team, you would have taken Richardson over the other two prospects to build your franchise around.
Yes, absolutely.
Nice. Just wanted to clarify. So nice. Yeah, I'm a big Anthony Richardson fan. Of course, we're all Shane Steichen fans. We saw what he did with Jalen Hurts. If he can mimic that with Anthony Richardson, then he surely does have a productive career ahead of him. So excited to see what he looks like for a drive or two on Thursday. So with one game remaining, like I said, pretty much teams know who's going to be on the final 53. So Shane and I on this episode will do our final 53 roster projections. Shane had conjured up a spreadsheet. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you have the visual for it. For those of you on the audio, we will walk through so that you do not feel left out. So essentially, we're going to go position by position. We're going to list all the players at that position, and then we will discuss who will be on the final roster and who will be on the outside looking in. Shane, ready to dive into it?
Let's do it.
All right. So, of course, quarterback leading the way. Not much to discuss here. The four players currently on the 90-man roster: Jalen Hurts, Marcus Mariota, Tanner McKee, Ian Book. Leave it to Philadelphia to have themselves a QB controversy because they can't stay away from one, but not at QB1. We might have one at QB2 between Tanner McKee as well as Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota, we discussed on the last episode, probably doesn't care much about preseason, but when you're throwing interceptions that aren't even in the remote zip code of your receiver, it's hard to be confident in the guy. Can he win you a game or two if he has to? I'm sure with prep time and the playbook and the first team offense, Mariota is capable, but man, he is leaving a lot to be desired here in preseason. Whereas Tanner McKee, the minute he comes in, bam, hits Joseph Nada. He finds Johnny King on the 2-point conversion. He's doing more with less than Mariota currently right now, but we do expect Mariota to be QB2. So Shane, I'm sure we are all in agreement that it's going to be Jalen Hurts, Marcus Mariota, and Tanner McKee heading into week one.
Yeah, no arguments there.
Did
I
Ian
think
Book even play in that last preseason game? I don't recall him throwing a pass.
no, he didn't. Although he might play the whole game this Thursday, we'll see. But I can't wait to watch Ian Book drop back 45 times and throw 6 passes. But there's no arguments there. I think the Eagles went into camp expecting to carry 2 quarterbacks. That's been what they've normally done. But McKee has played his way onto the 53. If you put McKee if you try to get him on a practice squad at this point, he's going to get claimed, which is a great problem to have. But he's definitely going to be on that 53-man roster. Now, he probably won't be a game day active. You're typically only going to have 2 game day active QBs, but McKee definitely makes the 53.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you risk him running on the practice squad. I was going to mention that as well. Some team has seen what he has done by now, and a lot of teams, a handful of teams are in kind of like QB developmental mode. Teams like kind of Tampa Bay, perhaps the Rams. A lot of teams are in QB develop mode right now, and they see Tanner McKee. They have the time, and they can afford to see what he is. And I think the Eagles don't want to run that risk. They want to keep that resource, potentially flip him down the road, or have him perhaps be the long-term backup to Jalen Hurts, even though they're stylistically different. So yeah, Ian Book, we hardly knew you. I'm sure you're a good kid, but we'll see you on the way out. Running backs.
Maybe the Rams should have drafted Tanner McKee instead of Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, I don't know. Stetson Bennett is 28 years old, so I don't know. Who has Sean Clifford? Who took him?
I don't remember.
Yeah, not great. Tanner McKee looking better than both of those guys. At the moment, running backs, the guys currently rostered: DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell, Rashad Penny, Austin Scott, Trey Sermon, and Kennedy Brooks. Heading into last week's preseason game, there were some rumblings that the Eagles could potentially cut Rashad Penny in favor of Trey Sermon. I thought it was ridiculous then. I certainly think it's ridiculous now. Trey Sermon had the fumble in that game, although he did make up for it with a 33-yard run in that game. Part of me feels like he's Jalen Hurts' boy. Does Jalen Hurts kind of get in Siri on his ear and say, I would like to keep Sermon around, do what you can to keep him. I'm not sure how much pull he has that way, but I certainly believe that Swift, Gainwell, Penny, and Scott will be your 4 backs heading into the season. Any qualms there, Shane?
No, not at all. I think that's the group. Sermon is probably going to be on the practice squad again. We've heard the Eagles talk about how much they like Sermon, or we've heard elements of the Eagles talk about how much they like Sermon, but it's telling that Boston Scott hasn't gotten hardly any time in the preseason. He's a lock. And Sermon, he's been hit or miss. You know, he had the touchdown run. He had a fumble. He had some bad reps in pass pro. He had a great rep in pass pro. I think he's a guy you keep around, but I don't think he's going to make this roster.
Yeah, I don't think so as well. Bull Wolf reported earlier that Kenneth Gainwell is likely going to be the leader of the group amongst all else. I know he kind of got into I was working at the time, but I saw that there was a like somewhat of a fight that was it Kenneth Gainwell, Jason Kelsey? A lot of people got involved. I haven't read up on it yet, but I did see Kenneth Gainwell in the mix. So he's fired up, ready for the year, and I'm sure that obviously the Eagles trust him. He was the main guy down the stretch in the playoffs. So despite the new additions with Penny and DeAndre Swift, we should expect Kenneth Gainwell to be featured in the backfield as well. Trey Sermon, probably keep him around on the practice squad. Kennedy Brooks, I think it's the end of the road here for him in Philadelphia. Tight ends currently on the roster. This is where it gets a little bit interesting. Dallas Goedert, Jack Stahl, Grant Calcaterra, Tyree Jackson, Dan Arnold, and Brady Russell. Brady Russell was undrafted free agent, I believe. Dan Arnold was brought in here during free agency. And then you kind of get the Tyree Jackson, the 3-year-long project now, where you kind of thought it was over. Like, you can't stay healthy. The experiment's over. It is what it is. Do you think, Shane, I do think Dallas Goedert, obviously, and Jack Stahl are the locks here. Grant Calcaterra and Tyree Jackson for tight end 3. Is Calcaterra better than Tyree Jackson now? And if so, how much is the differ in ceiling between Tyree Jackson and Calcaterra? I feel like the tight end 3 battle is closer than some believe.
Yeah, I think it could go either way, to be honest. And they both have injury histories. Grant Calcaterra retired at one point in college due to concussions and then unretired and ended up in the NFL. Tyree Jackson obviously has had a lot of injury issues. I would lean keeping Calcaterra, but I think Goddard's obviously a lock. I think Stoll is also a lock, and I think it comes down to Jackson and Calcaterra for that 3rd spot. I would lean Calcaterra right now.
Yeah, I think so as well. Just they like Tyree Jackson enough to keep giving him opportunities, and his athletic ceiling is so high. Do they keep him at tight end 3 and say we have to maybe use him throughout the season? We know what Calcaterra is, but at least Calcaterra has stayed healthy despite all of his injuries throughout college. He has stayed healthy. That is that. Dan Arnold, who was brought in free agency, no shot there, right? I haven't noticed him much during free agency. Probably just a pass catcher on the decline on the tail end of his career. Not much to write home there, I assume, right?
No, yeah, I don't think that Dan Arnold has a shot. Let's stick Tyree Jackson down here, and maybe if we have an extra spot, we can get him on. Maybe they would carry 4 tight ends. I kind of doubt it, but let's see how the rest of the roster shakes out.
Yeah, we'll see. Offensive line.
Well, we skipped wide receiver. Let's do that.
Oh, my fault.
I do think the Eagles might be light at wide receiver, carrying like only 5, so it could open up potential for an extra tight end. So,
yeah, wide receiver gets me sometimes because you have AJ, Devontae, Quez, Zacchaeus, and Covey as the lock. So when I talk to people and I say Covey is a lock, I get some weird looks, but he is like punt returner 1, right? Like I'm not outlandish for thinking that he's the primary punt returner, right? Or am I?
Yeah, he's your punt returner.
Like he's making this roster. People are like, I don't know if Covey. I think Covey is a lock. I don't even think it's up for discussion.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's your punt returner. They like him, and really, out of all these other guys, Joseph Nada, Devin Allen, Greg Ward, I think the Eagles would have liked to see somebody step up to be a 6th receiver for this team because they are thin on the outside. It just didn't really happen. I think Tyree Cleveland had the best shot.
I was about to say it would have been him if he didn't get hurt.
And I mean, Greg Ward looks good in the preseason, but that's because Greg Ward's an old man playing against rookies, and like he's too good for the preseason, but not really worthy of a 53-man roster spot. So I really do think they just carry those 5 wide receivers.
Yeah, I just think like, man, if one of them goes down, you're in a tight spot. I ran a poll on Twitter last week between if the Eagles do keep 6, who would be the 6? At the time, I had Deion Kane, Joseph Nada, Greg Ward, and Tyree Cleveland. This is before Cleveland got hurt, obviously, and Deion Kane had just come off injury, but it came down. It was pretty split between Greg Ward and Joseph Nada. Joseph Nada, the Eagles have ran with the ones at times. They like him, and Greg Ward, we all know what he is. He has the highest floor of them all. If you're in a pinch and you need a receiver, if you need Greg Ward to play regular season games, something terrible happened. Like it's not a good time. Something bad happened. So hopefully we don't need to call upon him. So 5 might be the case. Maybe Nada sneaks in there. I think Greg Ward is just safe on the practice squad. I don't foresee anybody coming in and clamoring at the door for his services. But maybe 5 is the way to go. Is that a little thin? Is that normal for teams around the league to only carry 5 receivers?
I think it's a split between like 5 and 6.
Sounds thin when you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, you're never especially with Dallas Goedert, you're never going 5 wide receivers.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And even when the Eagles go empty, like DeAndre Swift or Kenny Gainwell in the slot. So like it's pretty rare they're going to have a 4th receiver on the field for a play, much less a 5th. So I think that's fine, but I think they would definitely keep some of these other guys on a practice squad. I'll throw Joseph Nada down here as a maybe with Tyree Jackson, and we'll see where we get at the end of our projections.
If we're at 52 people, and it's between Tyree Jackson and Joseph Nada, who would you roster?
I would probably roster Jackson. He's flashed more, and I think Nada's going to get on a practice squad anyways.
Yeah. Good point. Offensive line. We didn't do this by like strictly positions, just the group. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelsey, Cam Jurgens, Lane Johnson, Tyler Steen, Jack Driscoll, Josh Sills, and Dennis Kelly, along with Josh Andrews, Sua Opeta, and Roger Johnson kind of on the outside looking in. Don't have to discuss the starting offensive line because we know how that is going to go. It looks like Jurgens will be the right guard. Not as much of a competition as we anticipated, but Steen, Driscoll will be the primary reserves. And then you get into the Dennis Kellys, the Josh Sills, the Josh Andrews, who was brought in as kind of the backup center, even though if Kelsey does go down, we assume Cam Jurgens would slide over. Chances that kind of like Dennis Kelly makes this roster. I know he was brought in, familiar with the team. He's gotten beat more often than I can, care to admit throughout he's looked worse than good so far this preseason. But I guess they would keep him around as kind of the backup swing tackle, put him in wherever somebody gets hurt. Any unexpected developments you see here at offensive line?
I don't know that Dennis Kelly makes the roster.
I don't think he does, honestly. I really don't.
I think Sua Opeta makes it as a backup. That'd be 8 with Steen, Opeta, and Driscoll as backups. And then Josh Sills maybe is their
Yeah.
ninth guy. They always like to go heavy offensive line. I would say it's either Josh Sills or Brett Toth, a guy they've kept around before. But I would say Sills is probably that ninth offensive lineman.
Yeah, I think Sills is a safe bet there. I think that's especially since they brought him back after all the legalities and everything. He got acquitted from the situation he was dealing with. They brought him back and he's been in practices. I think they have interest in keeping him around. I think Dennis Kelly is on the outside looking in. Your starters are obviously Mylata, Dickerson, Kelsey, Jurgens, and Lane Johnson. So that is the offensive line. We kind of zoomed through that. Any final notes on the offensive line? It's pretty much self-explanatory with the offense. They didn't lose much from last season. All the starters returned, minus Zach Pascal, right? Zach Pascal is the only guy they lost as a part of the offense, and
And
Miles Sanders
Isaac
clearly,
Seumalo.
yeah. And and Siamalu, yeah. So not a whole lot of moving parts. You lost your top running back who is phasing out towards the end of the year anyway. You lost your right guard and you lost your WR3. We expect Quez to take a step forward, and we'll see what Zacchaeus does. What are your expectations for Quez Watkins? I asked this on Twitter. Not a lot of people have really much for him. They're still kind of have a sour taste in their mouth from the Washington game and the drop in the Super Bowl and kind of his mental mistakes last season. What are your expectations for Quez? Does he step up and kind of have like a maybe a 500 yard, like 6 touchdown season? What are you expecting from him?
I think he has a better year this year than he did last year.
He was
I
hurt
mean,
for the most part, for
yeah,
what it's worth.
coming into last season, I thought Quez was going to have a good year, and I'd kind of sung his praises in the past, and everything that could go wrong did for him last year. And I think he got in his head. And I mean, he's not like the most precise route runner. He's not the guy you want to be running slants to on 3rd and 5 because he's not going to do well in those. But he does bring your verticality. I think he was thrown off a bit last year because in the past he's been used as the deep threat for his speed.
Mm-hmm.
And AJ Brown just became this insane downfield threat. And so he was kind of a guy without a role. I expect him to be better this year. And I don't expect Eagles fans to forgive him that quickly, and I'll certainly slander him the first time he drops a pass in week 2 or whatever, but I do expect him to be competent as wide receiver 3 and probably get paid as such in free agency next offseason.
Oh, man. Is this his last year? This contract year? Yeah. Oh, man. Well, this is was a 4-year deal. He was 2021. Yeah, because he was a 2020 draft pick. Wow, yeah. More free agency. And then you're going to have to pay Devontae this summer coming up, or next summer, rather, is the first extension eligible for Devontae. I'm sure he'll clamor for 22, 23 million a year. So we'll have some definitely wide receiver contracts depending on what the situation is the Eagles put themselves in throughout the season. Any last offensive notes before we throw to break and come back and talk about the defensive depth charts?
No, you got 24 guys on the offense right now with 2 maybes and Tyree Jackson and Joseph Nada. So we'll see if we can fit them on after we get through the defense.
Because they're going to load up on corners and all those guys. That's where all the depth and D tackles. They like to keep 14 of them. So definitely. So I will go to a quick break. When we come back, we'll run through the defensive side of the ball, see who's going to make the cut, see who will be on the outside, looking in potentially practice squad eligible. Keep it locked here, guys. We'll be right back on the EPA podcast, brought to you by Bleeding Green Nation.
We are back here on the EPA podcast, reacting to a little bit of week 2 preseason, giving our 53-man roster projections. We've been through the offense. Victor, let's turn the page to the defense. Let's talk about edge defenders. The Eagles have a lot of talent at edge defender. Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Nolan Smith, Derek Barnett, Patrick Johnson. You've got Kyron Johnson, Taron Jackson. How do you think the edge defender shakes out here? I mean, we can go ahead and for sure pencil in Sweat, Graham, Smith, and Reddick. That's a for sure 4.
This is where I feel like if the Eagles do make a trade before the season starts, I do feel like it would be Derek Barnett. Now, I know with the restructured deal, you can't take that cap hit. It's a substantial cap hit. I think over $8 million you would take by cutting him outright. But with the way his void years are set up, I believe you would be saving like $2 million, and then you'd be saving $2 million per year over the next 5 years, however they structured it. So I feel like Derek Barnett is like a prime like trade candidate. I don't know what his value around the league is, but I feel like Sirianni's patience is kind of growing thin with him. Yesterday he started another fight in practice. You like to see your guys fired up, but I don't know if you want to be starting fights at every chance Maybe he's a potential trade candidate. But if he's here, I foresee the starters being Reddick, Sweat, or not the starters on the roster: Reddick, Sweat, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Nolan Smith, and I think Patrick Johnson. I think he slides in. I do like Taron Jackson. I like what he brings to the table. I think he'll be practice squad. I think Kyron Johnson is practice squad. And Janarius Robinson is given some solid reps in preseason. I think the Eagles like what they see from him, and I think they'll like him enough to keep him around on the practice squad as well. But if Barnett does stick around, if the Eagles aren't just going to like clean their hands with him and whatever, because they did restructure his deal, I think he does get on to the final 53. I think your 6 guys are Reddick, Sweat, Graham, Barnett, Smith, and Patrick Johnson.
Yeah, I hate for Kyron Johnson to not make the team.
I know he's
core
good.
special teamer, and you've already lost Sean Bradley and Zach McPherson, who also played a lot of special teams. But
good point. You can sneak in.
I would like to see. I don't think there's going to be room. I don't think you can keep 7 edge rushers. I hope Barnett's gone. It would be via trade. I don't think they'd cut him. I hope they can trade him and keep Kyron Johnson. However, I don't think it's going to happen. This is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, and at the very least, Derek Barnett's a really good run defender. So I think you probably keep that depth more than a day 3 pick you would get for him. So I think Kyron Johnson ends up on the chopping block.
Yeah, we can add him to the Tyree and Joseph Nada like little group. We'll see at the end of their space, and maybe the special teams is very, very good point, because you lost McPherson, you lost Bradley, and McPherson was going to be like the leader of that unit. Like I think he played the most snaps on special teams last year, and you lose him. You do need some consistency along special teams. It's not like they were a particularly good unit last year. I'm actually surprised Michael Clay survived and made it for another season. So we'll see how all that shakes out. Defensive tackle, Shane. We have a group here, a very good group that is going to be tough to see who makes through. Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, Marlon Tuipulotu, Moro Ajomo, Katavius Street, and they did bring back Marvin Wilson. They keep bringing him back, so they must like something. But again, you mentioned they signed a bunch of like street defensive tackles just so they don't have to play their top guys in preseason. I have them keeping 5 personally. I think they keep Cox, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, and Tuipulotu. I think Ajomo sticks around on the practice squad. I think Katavius Street sticks around on the practice squad. Is 5 too low? How do you see that position shaking out?
I think there's a pretty good shot that they keep Ajomo as well. Now, I mean, he's looked good in the preseason. He's a guy they were really excited to draft. Obviously, he's got the concussion, and we don't know what that looks like. The problem with IRing him before the season is he has to stay on IR all season. Like, if you get him on your 53 initially and then put him on IR, you have the ability to bring him back after 4 games and let him practice and things. So let's stick Ajomo right here. I think he's a guy that might make the roster, but for now we'll leave him off.
Think so? Sneak through, yeah. I have him on the outside, but he's a very good chance he can make it through.
He's definitely the top guy in this group of maybes that we've got so far for me.
Yeah, for sure. I do like what Ajomo brings. The team likes him a lot. He's given some good reps in preseason as well. Katavius Street, they brought him in. Was he a former Saint? They brought him in kind of early on in free agency, I believe. It's been a while ago. I think that's how they got him in here. What's his deal? What are the chances that he gets any playing time this year? God forbid injuries.
None. I mean, if they're going to keep us, if they keep a 6th guy, it would be Ajomo, not Street. So.
Right. Yeah, I figured as much. Now we're at a position where things get dicey. Shane, how old are you again? We had this discussion about age. How old are you?
I am 32.
Okay.
33. 33. I just turned 33.
I'll be 30 this year, which means that at the ripe age of 27 years old, Miles Jack has called it a career in the NFL. 3 years younger than me, 5 years younger than you. How does that make you feel that Miles Jack has hung it up? I continuously think that at my age of almost 30 years old, I would be considered like on the tail end of my NFL career. And I don't even feel like I've even like hit the cusp of like a life yet, of like what real life, like where I'm supposed to be. And there's players that are my age that are just done with the phase, done with the NFL, made enough money, they're comfortable. Like how I give it to Miles Jack though, because this reminds me of like, it's not to the extent of Vontae Davis, but at halftime he said, I can't do it anymore. I'm not even going to risk injury. I'm not going to risk putting myself in a bad position. I'm going to come out there and this is just, I'm just done. And Miles Jack, like he already said, he wanted to be a plumber, an electrician. He wanted to like fight off the apocalypse or whatever the situation was. So half of his mind is already towards retirement. And then the Eagles called. He said, let me see what I have left. Then he was relegated to the second team. and he could probably see the writing on the wall. He just said, I'm not gonna cost another person a potential roster spot. I'm gonna hang it here, and good luck moving forward. So that opens up certainly another spot for someone else. But your thoughts on Miles Jack? I know we both agreed that Cunningham had the more likely chance to stick around, potentially start next to Nakobe Dean, and we'll talk about that in a second. But kind of tough to see, Miles Jack swallow his pride and say, yeah, this is it for me. I don't got it no more.
Yeah, I mean, I respect it. Deciding to walk away on your own terms, and
could be Jason Peters and try to get the bag as long as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously he could, in all likelihood, he could just hang it up and retire, but he wants to go be a plumber, and I think that's cool. So it'll be fun. Can you imagine being the person who calls Miles Jack to come like snake your toilet or something?
Mm-hmm. Who's the more legendary Eagle, Miles Jack, Marcus Goodwin, or Frank Gore?
Definitely Frank Gore.
Yeah, right, Frank Gore, because he gave us literally the cold shoulder, like said, like pulled the whole deal out, like he did the whole bit. But yeah, Miles Jack, it's tough for some players to swallow their pride. Jason Peters at the ripe age of 42 or 41, and has recently stated that I want to play this year. I'm gonna play for somebody. Somebody gonna call me, and I'm gonna play. So legendary bag chase by Jason Peters. Miles Jack said, I made enough money. I'm gonna go to trade school. I'm gonna do something else. I'm 27 years old, got my whole life ahead of me, and I'm just not. It's not worth the risk at this point to try and pretend like I can still play at a high level. So that leaves on the roster Nakobe Dean, Zach Cunningham, Christian Ellis, Nicholas Moreau, Ben Van Sumeren, and then they just picked up Quentin Bell and Tyreek Maddox-Williams as like kind of filler guys to play in the final preseason game. I assume I had a tough time wrapping my head around that Moreau was actually going to make this team before Miles Jack retired. I feel like Jack would have made it over him as the last linebacker. Moreau has no guaranteed money on his deal. The Eagles aren't tied to him financially. He hasn't really stood out a lot. But now with the absence of Miles Jack, I think it's going to be Dean, Cunningham starting next to him, Christian Ellis, who's had a very good summer, and I think Nicholas Moreau will be kept around for veteran depth. I know Ben Van Sumeren is flashing. I'm seeing a lot of fans of him on the timeline, so we'll keep an eye on him. But it's not like the Eagles have a ton of options. I think those top four guys are your only four guys you can really roll with at this point. I don't see any other way unless they trade or bring somebody else in. But I think they're going to have to roll with Dean, Cunningham, Ellis, and Moreau as their off-ball linebacker core for now.
Yeah, I'm not sure they even carry Nicholas Morrow.
Just three guys, you think? Man.
Possibly. I mean,
that's thin.
Morrow is definitely behind Christian Ellis.
For sure. Yeah.
You look at.
I think you have to though, by like default. Like you have no choice.
He's signed to a $1 million deal. It's not like he's going to get. It's not like you can't go get somebody else like that in free agency. I could see them going really thin at linebacker. Maybe less so now that Zach McPherson is hurt, and that clears up a little bit of the log jam at cornerback as far as who you're going to keep there. So we'll put him on for now, but I'm iffy. I'm iffy on Morrow's chances.
I am too. I just think they have to because they have no choice. Like, do you think they just keep three? Is that normal? Just three off-ball linebackers? Like, man, if Dean or Moreau go, or Dean or Cunningham go down, like we don't even know what Cunningham has left. Like he's looked good in preseason. He was especially moving around a lot in that second game. But man, like you already have Nakobe Dean tweaking ankles and all this, and like man, that's hairy. That's a hairy situation.
Yeah, it's definitely not ideal. You do also have though Terrell Edmonds and Sidney Brown both have played in the box a lot. You experimented a little bit with Nolan Smith playing off-ball linebacker. So I mean, there would be some options there, but I agree it would be really thin. So we'll stick Morrow on for now.
Yeah, I think he just catches on because like I think they just need the depth, and they brought him here, and I think they just need the depth. You have Dean getting injured all over the place in preseason, and Cunningham they only got here a couple of weeks ago, and you have Christian Ellis who's looked good, but do you want to depend on a guy who didn't play many defensive snaps last year? I think he's just like kind of like a Band-Aid option. Like if there's a leak and water is flowing, you need to throw like just some tape over the leak. I think Moreau is that tape if you get in a hairy situation. But yeah, it's not ideal, especially with Miles Jack retiring. Cornerbacks, depending on how many they're going to roster here, you have Slay, Bradbury, Avonte Maddox, Josh Jobe, Keely Ringo, Mario Goodrich, Josiah Scott, Eli Ricks, and Mekhi Gardner. Zach McPherson unfortunately suffered a torn Achilles, will be lost for the season. He was waived with the injury designation. If he makes it through, waivers will be reverted back to the injured reserve. So very tough. McPherson was getting primary nickel reps. He was going to be the first man up if Avonte Maddox goes down because it's pretty much expected that Avonte Maddox will go down at some point throughout the season. So now backup nickel becomes a bit of a question mark. But Shane, I think it's going to be Slay, Bradbury, Maddox, Josh Jobe, Keely Ringo, and I think Mario Goodrich will get the nod at slot over guys like Josiah Scott. Eli Ricks has flashed in preseason. They'll probably keep him around on the practice squad. I think Mekhi Garner will also be kept around on the practice squad. And I think Josiah Scott, don't see many people coming in and trying to swipe him off the practice squad. They've had to play him last year. We all remember the 3rd and 30 with T.Y. Hilton and the whole bit. But the Eagles have played him before and when they've been in tough situations. But I think Goodrich will get that nod at backup nickel. How do you see kind of that depth chart shaking out with the absence of McPherson?
Yeah, the McPherson injury is tough because
it's tough, man.
You expected him to be your backup slot, and now that's not there anymore. And Avonte Maddox is injury prone. He's one of the better slot defenders in the NFL when he's healthy. Unfortunately, he misses a lot of games. And so you get into a situation where Keely Ringo can't play the slot. He's got top end speed. He
looked like he could play outside last week. So
yeah, be that as it may, he definitely can't play in the slot. Eli Ricks, you can't put Eli Ricks in the slot. He's also he's not sudden enough in his movements to be in the slot. So, in a pinch, you can throw James Bradbury in the slot, which they've looked at, and put Josh Jobe outside. You could try to put Josh Jobe in the slot, and maybe that works. Or you can keep Josiah Scott or Mario Goodrich, one of those guys. I don't think Eli Ricks is probably going to make this roster.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Because they need one of those slots. The other thing you could look at, too, is Sidney Brown played close to 400 snaps in the slot in college. So in a pinch, he could be your backup slot defender. The problem with that is he's a rookie who's also pushing to be a starting safety. And so if he wins that starting safety job, you don't want to not play him at safety because he's your backup slot. But it's
then you put Edmonds. You put Edmonds in the slot, then I guess, right?
Yeah, it's going to be hard for him to learn both positions at the same time. So all that to say, I think they keep Goodrich or Scott as a slot defender. I would like to see him keep Goodrich.
I would like to too.
Wouldn't shock me if they keep Scott because they had to rely on him last year. And again, this is a team with Super Bowl aspirations, and so you don't want shaking. I mean, not that Scott's great, but what you're going to get from him. But for now, I would say Goodrich is that 6th cornerback. It wouldn't shock me if it was Scott, though.
Yeah, I would give the nod to Goodrich just because of the potential there. We've seen Scott. We know what he is. He's like Moreau. He's another Band-Aid. Like if the water's flowing, you need to slap some tape on there. Josiah Scott is the tape they used last year. I think it's going to be Goodrich. He showcased enough in the preseason to deserve the roster spot. And like you said, Bradbury's taking reps there as well. But he will definitely be needed on the outside next to Darius Slay. But for the first time in a long time, there's some depth here at cornerback for the Eagles. So this is like first world problems, kind of like when you're this deep and we're sitting here talking about like backup nickel. I don't know, like just shows you what kind of depth the Eagles have, and we're not like. In years past, we're whining about like who the starting QB is going to be and how's the running back's going to shake out, and for God's sakes, who's going to be catching passes with no receivers. And now all these years later, we're sitting here worried about the backup nickel spot. Just shows you how far the team has come in recent years that we're able to discuss these problems and not so much the more prominent position. Safety, Shane, you just mentioned. Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown, Terrell Edmonds, Kayvon Wallace, Justin Evans, and Tristan McCullum are your guys on the 90-man right now. Reed I mentioned last week, Reed doesn't even have to play preseason, so he's a seasoned vet at this point. Sidney Brown has given Terrell Edmonds some run at that safety spot opposite of him. He's looking good in preseason. He's doing very well in training camp. Terrell Edmonds, he reminds me so much of Anthony Harris just because he's the safe bet. If the first few weeks you want to throw Edmonds out there just to give Sidney a couple weeks to see how the regular season goes and then throw him in there week 4 or 5. It wouldn't shock me if Terrell Edmonds is thrown out there week 1 as kind of the safe option opposite Reed Blankenship. But Sidney is hot on his tail, man. He's gonna start opposite Reed at some point this season. I don't know which week, but it's definitely coming. And Kayvon Wallace has looked good in camp as well. He's kind of pulling it all together. How many safeties do the Eagles keep at this juncture, Shane? Do they sneak Justin Evans in there for depth? I don't think Tristan McCullum is in any phase. I'm going to make this roster. But Justin Evans, for what it's worth, has gotten first-team reps next to Reed. Reed has been the one constant. Evans, Sidney Brown, Terrell Edmonds, Kayvon Wallace, they've all gotten first-team reps throughout camp next to Reed Blankenship. What are your projections here at the safety position?
Yeah, so it gets interesting here. because we've got 5 spots left on the roster. We're saying Reed, Terrell Edmonds, Kevon Wallace, and Sidney Brown are all locks. And so then it comes down to, do you keep Justin Evans or one of these other guys that we've left off the roster so far? And
right, how many people on this whole roster already?
We have 5 slots left. So if we keep
counting special teams safeties, or no?
Oh, well, yeah, I already just plugged in Elliott.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, oh my God, no kicker.
Yeah, sorry. I jumped the gun there because that's all that's on the roster there. So, yeah, with 3 special team slots, that gives us 5 slots here. So, I think those 4 are locks. Justin Evans. I don't know. I think, like, if you don't keep Nicholas Morrow, you probably for sure keep Justin Evans, because then you potentially have safeties being backup linebackers and stuff. But I guess I'll say this. We've got 2 slots left, and I think those 2 slots go to Nicholas Morrow, Justin Evans, Morrow, Ajomo. I think those are the 3 guys you decide between for those last 2 spots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be tough. So there's, before safeties, there's 5 spots, you're saying, right? 5 roster spots before safeties. So you keep those 4, and then that leaves just 1 spot, right?
Yeah, so you keep either Evans or maybe you keep Ajomo.
And we did we roster Moreau or no?
Yeah, we rostered Moreau, so you could also take him off and put Evans and Ajomo.
I would leave off Justin Evans, and I would roster. Oh, but you need one of they might keep him for special teams, though. You're right, because Ajomo can't play. Like, he's not going to play special teams, right?
Yeah,
they'll just keep him for defensive tackle depth. I
think with the special teams considerations, you probably keep
Justin
Evans.
And I think the team likes him a little more than they're letting on, just because they like him enough to see what he looks like in first team reps.
So then the question: do we take Morrow off and put Ajomo on, since we're keeping 5 safeties, or do we leave it as is?
How many D tackles are we at?
5.
Man, I'm just scared of that off-ball linebacker. That, like, 3 off-ball line, like that's all we're doing on game days is just 3. Like if Dean gets hurt, like, then you're on life support at that point. Like, it is.
Hey, Sidney Brown played 700 snaps in the box, or not? Sorry, Sidney Brown played 360 snaps in the box in college.
Okay, but if he's the other starting safety, what are you doing? Is Terrell Edmonds playing off-ball linebacker?
Well, Terrell Edmonds also plays a lot in the slot, so. Or sorry, in the box. I can't talk anymore.
Who serves a higher purpose in the reserve role, Ajomo or Nicholas Morrow? Who do you think the Eagles are going to benefit more from? This really is first world problems. We're talking about the 53rd roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Morrow. I think it's Morrow. I think you go back again to you're a Super Bowl contender, and Ajomo is a better young player that you would like to develop. But you can't be that thin at linebacker if you've got championship aspirations.
I'm so terrified of that depth. Like, they're like I said, Dean tweaks an ankle when he's out. Like you are on life support, and you got to literally use your safeties. And Ajomo is like you can afford to keep him on the practice squad. I think you already have 5 D tackles, and if you're going to play other guys, they're going to look at like Tui Pelotu and Milton Williams before they even look Ajomo's way. I think there's a better chance they're going to need a 4th linebacker than they will a 6th defensive tackle.
Yeah, you're right. We'll go with that. If you were the I don't know, a bad team. If you're the Giants, you're keeping Morrow Ajomo here, but if you're the Eagles, you probably got to keep Nicholas Morrow.
Yeah, I think there's just a better chance they're going to need a 4th linebacker than the 6th defensive tackle, I think. And even like other guys can shift around. They'll use some like edges as like D tackles if they have to. Like, I just think there's a better chance they're going to need to call upon that 4th linebacker, especially with the injury history that's there and the fact that Cunningham has been here for all of like 14 days, and there's just so much uncertainty at that position. I think you're going to need as many bodies as possible. And also with the fact that Morrow is a veteran who had 100+ tackles last year, and you have Ajomo, who was the 7th round draft pick, who you're not expecting a whole lot from. It just when you weigh the two, it makes more sense to keep around Nicholas Morrow from positional value and just from a veteran standpoint.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll do that. That gives us
talked you into it. Hell yeah.
Few guys for sure you're putting on the practice squad if you can get them there. Our first guys out were Morrow Ajomo, Kyron Johnson, Joseph Nada, Mekhi Gardner, Tyree Jackson, Eli Ricks, Contavia Street. Those are probably guys that you're definitely trying to get onto the practice squad if you can.
Where are we at with Devin Allen? What's his deal? What's going on here? What's going on? Is he worth keeping around again, or is this just like, all right, man? Like,
you got to be able to do more than run fast to play in the NFL.
He catches passes. He catches passes. Any you caught some passes in training camp? No. Maybe he'll flash something in this third preseason game, because that's what he did against the Browns last year, right? He had that one deep pass, and everybody like was screaming about it. So very, very, very nice stuff. I like the way the roster looks. I do. I like the way. But man, you would like to keep a Jomo around. I mean, you would like to. It's just like the Eagles are in a position where they don't need to develop him right now. They can keep him around, develop him at his own pace, and I just don't think they'll ever need to play him in a regular season game. I just don't see, unless they're up 44-6 in the fourth quarter, and they're like, let's see what a Jomo can do in a real life situation. But yeah. I think this is a fair depth chart. Sua Opeta. Did we put Sua Opeta over Dennis Kelly? Is that what we did?
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, we're talking about developing defensive tackles, and that's fair, but the Eagles do have 4 defensive tackles on this roster under the age of 25, and Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, and Marlon Tuipulotu. So although they really like to build through the trenches, and I ascribe to that, that's probably excessive to keep a 5th young defensive tackle like that over a 4th linebacker.
Yeah, I think so. We didn't talk about special teams, but man, please get a punter in here, because they let Zettner go. Sipos is still here, who was literally graded as one of the worst punters in 2022. We saw what he did in the Super Bowl, and man, he wasn't good throughout the year. I know like some other punters are getting released around the league. I need to not see Aaron Sipos on this roster week 1. Like, if he's the punter, the Eagles better just go for it on 4th and down every single time, because you're better off trying to do that than hoping Aaron Sipos is going to give you an above average punt in any situation.
The Eagles punted Ty Zettner far more efficiently than Ty Zettner ever punted for the Eagles.
Yeah, they sure did. Yeah, I just man, they got to just go for it on 4th down, like at this point, or they just have to convert on 3rd long all the time. Like, you can't leave Aaron Sipos out there, and like he. I want to say he costed them the Super Bowl, because there was a few mistakes between the Hurts fumble and the Quez drop and the Siamalu false start that led to the fumble, and all this and that we will continuously replay on our minds until the Eagles inevitably win it with Hurts under center. But like, Aaron Sipos did them no favors in the Super Bowl either, and I just am shocked that he's still hanging around this roster. And it's like there's like better punters out there that are available. Like, I haven't looked out the names, but the Cardinals just released, like, what's his name, Sam Hack or whatever his name is. I'm sure he's better than Aaron Sipos. I need to see somebody else on this roster in a couple of weeks, or it's not going to be fun on 4th downs.
Yeah, I would imagine they will scour the waiver wire during the cut downs.
Let Jake Elliott punt the ball, for God's sakes. Like, do it. Let somebody do it. Rick Lovato. You know what's funny on Madden? I always have this issue on Madden where, like, you play the start up the franchise and you get through roster cuts, and Rick Lovato is listed as a tight end, and Madden always recommends you to cut him because he's rated like 30 as a tight end. But like, he's your long snapper, so I always cut him in Madden. So I'm just like, I'm never going to use him. Like, I don't care who the video game-esque long snapper is. It doesn't matter in a video game. But it's funny because I always see his name, and Madden's always like, just cut this guy. Why is he here? But the Eagles keep him,
Yeah, there's not bad snaps in Madden. So I mean, you could literally convert a wide receiver to center and play him, and you'd never get a bad snap or a bad long snap. So yeah, long snappers are pointless in Madden.
This is the roster I'm going to use in Madden now, because roster cuts always give me a hard time. I always keep like 6 receivers, and I don't hold positional value as much as I do when actually like doing work in real life. But maybe this is the roster I roll with in Madden. They've already relegated to Zach McPherson to the free agency, so I'm just like, well, he'll come back. He'll come back on IR. So it is what it is, man. But this is fun. This is probably how the roster is going to shake out, unless somebody like dazzles in preseason, or like Ian Book goes 30 for 32 preseason. But even then, Tanner McKee is still going to be your QB3. Any final notes? Any final disagreements that you have here? I know Morrow versus Jomo is gonna get on your nerves for a little bit, but I just think the veteran's gonna edge it out, and Morrow Jomo will certainly have his time. I just don't think it's going to be his rookie year. That's all.
It really throws me off that we're referring to Nicholas Morrow by his last name and a Jomo by his last name when his first name is also Morrow.
Oh yeah, yeah, that is true.
Morrow Jomo. You can do that as like what's the Wheel of Fortune when they have the before and after category where like the one word in the middle is the end of one phrase.
Yeah, that's funny.
Nicholas Morrow Jomo. So that's been throwing me off all podcasts. But other than that, I've got no final notes here. I think that's a pretty solid roster.
Speaking of names that throw you off, I'm surprised we went 50 minutes into the show without even mentioning it. Chances of we get the Taylor Swift backfield, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, it's not going to happen, but I'm surprised you went through the whole thing without even mentioning it because it's probably so unlikely. But you just reminded me with the whole name thing. The Eagles have a chance to make the Taylor Swift backfield. What are the chances, man? You think Howie and Jim Irsay were having any discussions in joint practices? I don't think it's going to happen, but it's always fun to speculate.
0% chance.
Yeah, if there was a lower than 0, I would put it there. But
and I don't say 0% chance lightly. Like, there is literally no chance this happens. I mean, the Colts are talking out of both sides of their mouth. It's, we don't value Jonathan Taylor enough to pay him. Also, we value him at a first round pick level in a trade.
I just don't understand. They're the one team that can, with a rookie contract for their quarterback, they're the one team that can afford to pay a all pro running back. Like, what is the problem here? I just don't understand. You want Anthony Richardson to have like a dependable guy that you can like take pressure. It makes me mad when I think about it because I don't know this is the ideal situation to pay a running back. They have the most ideal situation in the league to pay a running back, and they're just refusing to. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I've talked about this on my other podcast, but it just doesn't make sense. Like, the Colts literally don't have a top 50 receiver in the NFL. They don't
Michael
have a
Pittman's top what, 75?
Yeah, I mean, they probably don't have a top 25 tight end, maybe top 20. They don't have weapons. This is a franchise that ruined Andrew Luck's career by not giving him weapons in an offensive line. You have the greatest asset in pro sports, a quarterback on a rookie contract in Anthony Richardson. You could pay Jonathan Taylor 4 years, $50 million. That would make him the second highest paid running back in the NFL. It would make him happy. It's off the books when you get to signing Anthony Richardson to a new deal. And I put that out there, and Colts fans were against that. And they're like, we're not competing for a Super Bowl this year. And I'm like, it's not about that. It's about not ruining your rookie quarterback and stunting his development. Give him something. And it doesn't have to impact your long-term. Like, long-term, that contract comes off the books before you have to pay Richardson, hopefully, because he proves to be the guy. So I think they're messing up. I think generally you shouldn't pay running backs. I think some teams are taking that too. Like, the Eagles shouldn't have paid Miles Sanders. Jonathan Taylor was literally an MVP candidate 2 years ago. He's a guy that's worth paying on a short deal.
So Colts fans are bigger Zach Moss fans than they're letting on, huh? Is what I'm hearing here. They like Zach Moss and who they just signed, Kenyon Drake, I think. Yeah, I guess if you like Zach Moss being your running back one, if I was a Colts fan, I'd be hammering the table to pay Jonathan Taylor. I don't know. I know how the running back market is and the Zoom calls and all that's been going on, but Jonathan Taylor is literally in the ideal situation to be paid, and he's going to, if they want the two-man tandem of Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, I just don't see how you do it unless there's like theatrics behind the scenes between Irsay and him and the agent or whatever is going on. Obviously, we don't know. But yeah, from an outside perspective, from us, it just, a lot of it doesn't make sense. It's all stupid, but fun to come up here and go over the final 53 projections. We don't expect a lot of shocks. I remember when Travis Fulgham got released a few years ago, and it was, holy hell, they did this. Don't foresee any shocks like that this year. Excited for the regular season coming up. See Jalen Hurts play some football, who's looking spectacular in training camp. Can't wait to see him get out there and continue on the trajectory that is on. Shane, is this the most impressive bag chase you've ever seen from a quarterback? Well, we don't follow endorsements for other quarterbacks, obviously. But, man, from when you watch everything that Jalen Hurts is doing between Jordan Brand and Hulu and this energy drink and the contract he landed and, like, he making his acting debut and all this stuff, this man went from, like, this time last year, I don't know how much money he had, but, man, like, you see everything he's done this offseason, then the master's degree, and he just makes me feel like I'm not doing nearly enough in life. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you compare yourself to Jalen Hurts, you're definitely not. But
I set a high bar for myself. Right?
Yeah, I have a high bar for myself. It's not that high.
Yeah, we gotta have attainable goals here, and it's so exciting to see that he's becoming one of the young prominent faces in the NFL, and it's driving other fan bases crazy, and it's just fantastic to watch. I'm Victor Williams. You can follow me on all social media platforms at The Philly Pod. Read all my content over at thelibertyline.com. I'm firing up my podcast back up this week. I hope to, in preparation for the regular season. Shane, where can the people find you and everything that's going on with you? Is YouTube back? All 22? Not yet?
YouTube is back. I put out
yeah?
all 22 videos from
Let's
the
go.
preseason week 2, so you can check those out on YouTube at Shane Haff NFL. Same handle as Twitter and Threads. I also post. I like clip them up into like 2-minute sections for like a play or two and put them on Twitter with a link to the full video.
Nice.
So you can check it out there. But I highlighted 4 plays of Nolan Smith, 2 run defense, 1 power move against DeJuan Jones, and 1 speed rush move. So those are there. And then also I did a all 22 film review for Tanner McKee, 8 plays from him. So you can check those out on my YouTube.
Fun stuff from Tanner McKee. Hopefully we don't have to see him a whole lot this year. But, man, if you need to win a game, I would strongly consider it. We'll be back next week, guys. Are we doing post-game for this preseason? Are we doing for Colts? Are we?
Yes, there will be post-game. I'm tentative right now. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to actually even watch the game. So I'm trying to work some things around so I can be there. But there will be a post-game show, so you guys be sure and check that out.
Yeah, check that out. Check out all the other shows in the feed as well. NFC's mixtape and all the other things that are going on in the BGN radio feed. If you don't hear from Shane or myself on the post-game, we'll be back next week on another EPA podcast preparing for the regular season. Until then, we'll catch you guys next week. Peace out here from the EPA Podcast.
Go Birds.